Hey guys, Mike Steidley, action sports filmmaker and commercial director, and welcome to the Atomos Academy. First and foremost, I hope everyone is staying safe out there, and I know we can't all be together at NAB in Las Vegas, but what I'm going to do today is walk you through the entire Atomos ecosystem and show you guys how you can use that to supercharge your filmmaking kit. At the end of my presentation, I'm going to give you guys 5 tips and tricks for content creation and show you guys some of my top things that I've learned over the years, a few things that I wish I knew sooner, and just some overall tips to help you guys improve your filmmaking skills. All right guys, so I'm gonna show you guys my demo reel and then we're gonna jump into the presentation. So I'm going to jump right in and give you guys a quick history of how I got into filmmaking. Basically, I grew up competing and riding mountain bikes and was a sponsored athlete, won 13 national championship titles, and traveled the entire globe producing my own content. From there, it wasn't too much longer before I ended up forming my own production company, and now that keeps me pretty busy as a full-time filmmaker. So behind the lens, it started with making action sports content and then transitioned into doing client work for big name brands all across the US. Typically, I'm either out in the woods filming action sports content or working in a studio, working on commercial work. We mix in a lot of stuff with drones, a lot of stuff with gimbals. So all that being said, what I need out of my camera packages can be very diverse and is always constantly changing for what gear I'm bringing on different shoots. So that's why the Atomos ecosystem is really great. Everything has synergy across the board, and whether I'm working on a 19-inch monitor, the 7-inch monitor, or down to the 5-inch monitors, I know that my images and what I'm producing for my client is going to be consistent all around. So I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about the camera setups that I'm using and kind of what monitors I'm pairing with what in different situations, how I'll go about kind of selecting that gear, building out that camera package, or deciding what to throw in the back of the SUV when I'm going to go out filmmaking. So the main camera that I'm using is the Panasonic EVA 1, and I basically set that camera up for ProRes RAW almost all of the time. That camera produces amazing results when you use the Atomos monitor because you're basically supercharging the camera to take full advantage and full readout of that 5.7 sensor. You can shoot 30 frames a second in ProRes RAW in up to 5.7K. You can get 60 frames in 4K and then 240 frames in 2K. So that camera is a pretty good form factor for a lot of the run and gun work. It can handle documentary work as well as some of my commercial filmmaking needs when I don't want to bring in a RED camera and deal with bringing in V-mount batteries and a bigger kind of setup. So what's nice about the Atomos monitor is, like I said, getting that ProRes RAW and then just being able to properly expose that. So when you're shooting ProRes RAW in the 2K 240 on the EVA, you're going to get significantly cleaner footage out of that camera. So here I'm going to show you guys a couple quick examples of some slow motion clips out of that camera and just some examples of the highlight recovery abilities that the camera has. Using Atom HDR to basically get the full scope of what I'm looking at was really, really important. Having that 7-inch screen, all the additional real estate really lets you kind of see everything that's going on in your framing, helps you kind of nail those shots, make sure you're hitting critical focus, and it's just a really good monitor to use all around. I'm also a really big fan of using the Panasonic GH5 and the GH5S. Those cameras are great because you can pack them into a backpack, and then when using the Atomos monitors, you can get the full 4K 60 in 10-bit as opposed to 8-bit if you're just recording on the cameras on their own. So normally when I'm using that setup, I'll do one camera with a 7-inch monitor. That's going to be on sticks or maybe a slider, normally shooting longer lenses on that, and then I will put the second camera into the Movi or maybe a small gimbal depending on how big of a shoot it is. I use the Moza gimbal a lot. That one's pretty good for kind of more run and gun stuff. But either way, in those situations, I'll normally go for the 5-inch Ninja monitor just to be a little bit lighter and just be kind of nimble, keep the whole kind of camera package nice and light. So that camera's been around for a while, don't need to jump into the specs too much, but like I said, the Atomos monitor allows you to unlock that 10-bit Kodak when you're shooting in 60 frames a second. So that's really just an added benefit of using that monitor system with that camera. So I pretty much bring my Atomos monitors with me to any shoot, even if I'm not shooting on my Panasonic camera packages. We use them with the RED camera all the time just to make sure you're nailing critical focus. I can load my Luts, kind of check all my settings and just make sure that the image that I'm pulling out of the camera looks good. I've gotten to the point where I just kind of know that if it looks good on the Atomos and I bring it back to the editing bay, it's going to look exactly like it did on set. So there's just no surprises. A lot of the stuff that we're doing, we really only maybe will get one take, especially in the action sports cinematography. You know, you're sitting around, you're waiting, maybe the athlete's getting ready or they're just working up to it, you know, getting ready to kind of go for that trick or go for that take. So you really only get one opportunity to kind of get things right. So you want to make sure that you're hitting critical focus. We'll use false color all the time to make sure that the exposure of the image is, you know, looking good, and then I'll have the waveforms going as well just to make sure that as the light's changing outdoors, we're not going to miss anything. Or, you know, if I'm working on the gimbal, I can be on the gimbal, going for my gimbal shot and kind of moving around, you know, using my peripheral vision to make sure that as I'm running through the woods or whatever terrain I'm on, that I'm not going to trip over everything. But then having those zebras there as like an extra kind of like a lane change assist in a car just helps me know that if the light changes a little bit, the sun pokes through, then I'm not going to clip the image, and I just know what I'm getting is going to be usable when I get back to the editing suite. I'm also a huge fan of using the monitor for drones. A lot of the DJI drones that I use on the regular, like my Inspire 2, probably one of my favorite drones just because it's so portable. You really can't totally tell your exposure when you're using the little iPad screen. So I'll run an HDMI out into my 7-inch monitor and use false color on that just to make sure that I'm not clipping anything, or, you know, just have my image right where I want it. And if I'm using some of the longer focal length lenses, I can punch in on the monitor, check critical focus there, and that way I'm not relying on the DJI system to nail focus. I just know that I'm checking it with my Atomos monitor and that the image is going to be kind of as I'm seeing it with my eyes on the monitor. So that's a huge plus there, and something that I think a lot of people don't always look at, but you can use these monitors with pretty much any camera out there, or with the drones, or basically anything that you can get an HDMI or an SDI signal out of. All right, so let's talk about the monitors themselves and some of the things that I really love about using them, and some of the things that really make them stand out from using other systems. So first and foremost is the brightness. Depending on which monitor you're at, you're looking at anywhere from up to 3000 nit brightness for the new 7-inch monitor down to 1000 nits on the 5-inch monitors. You've got pretty much every input option you can think of, and then you've got recording and non-recording options when you're looking at the 5-inch monitors. So this will allow you, if you're doing something with, say, a Canon camera which can't take advantage of internal recording, to just allow you to have a little bit lighter weight monitor, or to just have a monitor that comes in at a little bit cost-effective price point. So for me, being outdoors and shooting a lot of action sport content or content on gimbals, I don't need to use the sun hood because of the brightness of the monitor. So this is a really big plus, and just really allows you to see the image rather than having something with that lower brightness where you're not going to really be able to just kind of tell where your exposure is at, or to be able to see the details in critical focus. Probably the most important thing that you can use these monitors for is to help nail that critical focus and make sure that you're getting your exposure perfect. So as far as focus, you've got a couple different focus modes. You've got just a regular kind of focus peaking, and you've got 3 different levels of how aggressive that is over your image. So you can really dial that into your specific taste. You can change the background color, so depending on what you're shooting, you can change that to something that's really gonna pop and help you really just see if you're hitting those kind of critical marks on the focus. As far as just overall exposing the image, you've got false color, which I really love because sometimes you just can't totally tell, you know, if you're maybe clipping the image or a little bit too hot or a little bit too dark. You can see right what parts of the image might need some attention if you're in a studio setting. So that's going to be super, super helpful to just dial your kind of exposure in, kind of using those tools. You've also got the waveform and vector scope, so you can monitor that way as well. The zebras you can slide on the go to your taste. So I'll generally run mine at about 95 to 105, and I kind of have those just to make sure that when I'm exposing my image, or even just as I'm waiting for a take outside, I can just tell if the light changes real quick. I kind of will set that at where I want my maximum exposure to be in certain areas, and then I can kind of keep an eye on that. So if I'm waiting for a take, I can wait to be sitting around waiting, and then when I'm ready to go for that take, I can see if I need to make a quick last second change or if I can just go for the shot. A lot of this stuff with auto, action sports, or some of this outdoor stuff, you know, you're really just kind of fighting the light all day with kind of changing circumstances. So I love using that to be able to just make sure that I'm kind of nailing, you know, my image exposure overall. What's really cool about recording to the monitors is the different playback options. You can play back your 60 frames per second footage at 40%, so you can look at it right on the go and just kind of see what that's going to look like on set. You can let the clients see what that'll look like as well, which is really helpful rather than just saying, oh, we got a slow motion shot. You can actually show them the shot, show them what it's going to look like when it's slowed down. So that's really helpful. You can also use the sliding bar to just scrub to a specific portion of the clip and then play that in slow motion, or if you want to just review a certain part of the take over and over, you have that option to be able to jump right to it, which is really going to save you time on set, which is super important. You can even punch in on the footage and check focus with focus peaking after the fact. So one thing that I'll do is after I've gone for a take, I'll zoom to the exact spot where I want to make sure I want to check critical focus. You can pause the video, punch in on the video, use your finger to zoom around and just make sure that you've hit focus on that, you know, exact spot. So super helpful for just checking your footage after the fact. You've also got full control of adding your own LUTs and previewing what those would look like on set. So you can load in up to 8 LUTs on the monitor that you're using. And then from there, you can overlay the LUT, and you've got two options. One, you can just have it to be over the image and then you'll still retain your raw or log profile, or you can actually burn it in, which is pretty cool if you're like on a quick turnaround for some shoots. There is an option when maybe you just want to burn that LUT right into your footage and kind of get right to the edit and not have to really worry about color grading. It's great if you're maybe doing something like, say, real estate. You can shoot in the log profile to get the extra dynamic range out of the camera, and then just use a regular Rec 709 conversion LUT and then burn that right in and then just skip a whole extra step in post. So super handy. I have used that on time to time, but what I really use it for is just kind of showing clients the look on set. You can show them kind of either, you know, some creative looks or just, you know, correct your log footage and then just let them kind of fall in love with what the footage can look like at the end, rather than just looking at something, you know, like a washed out log image or just a general Rec 709 image. So super handy when you're dealing with the client on set and being able to show them those options. Atom HDR. So if you're new to log footage and working with log footage, you're gonna love this feature. What this is allow you to do is to set your camera, pick which log you're using, super easy, super simple to set up. Hands down, the easiest way to get into shooting log footage and to make sure you're monitoring log correctly. So the Sumo is my go-to monitor when I'm on a commercial shoot. That thing will basically be base camp for everyone hanging out, having the client hang out, watching the footage, and we'll use the recording options on that. Sometimes we use it as a backup, but I'll really just use that to kind of have a secondary way to kind of review and play back my footage, just using some of those playback options. So we can be speeding to the camera and speeding to the monitor that's attached to the camera, and then also speeding to the Sumo, and then we can review the footage on the Sumo, and then that kind of allows the camera package to be doing its own thing. Say you maybe need to go for a lens change, or you're going from the gimbal back to sticks and slider, you can just watch the footage with the client on the Sumo while the AC is working on the camera package, getting it set up for the next shot. So super handy to be able to do that. Also, if you're working with an agency, if there's a particular take they really like, you can favorite that clip and then you don't have to go back and forth or be making notes. You can just hit a thumbs up or a thumbs down. So if there's a particular take that they like, you can just thumb that and then know when you get back to post, you've already got that marked and you don't have to go back to the agency or to the client and say, hey, you know, did you like this one? Did you like that one? So use that all the time, especially when you're working with brands and they're very particular on maybe how their image is looking in a certain take. Just kind of gives you that option to just mark everything down and kind of speed up your editing workflow. So all of your media is going to get recorded to an SSD drive. So I feel way more safe going that route than recording in camera to card. The SSD drives across the board from all the different brands that are out there that are compatible with the Atomos are pretty much bomb proof. And then you have everything ready to go on SSD. You can bring that drive back. You can put that right into your computer and just start editing off that. Or you can use something like the G-Tech EVA reader and offload the footage super fast. So makes speeding up the workflow and post-production process, kind of getting into that, you know, really quick and just having something that's really, really reliable. All right, so here's 5 tips and 5 things that I wish I knew when I first started filmmaking, and 5 things that the Atomos product can help you do to get better shots. Number 1, having a bigger monitor is going to get you better shots. So when I first started, I was using the little DSLR screen on the back of my camera, my GH4, and not totally nailing my framing. Oftentimes I'd come home from a shoot, I'd be checking out my footage, and I wish I'd just done things a little bit differently when I was out in the field. Having a nice big monitor to really see what you're looking at is gonna allow you to move your camera around, kind of find that angle, or if you're working with a gimbal, you can get nice and low, angle that screen up to, you know, your field of view so you can see what you're doing, and just allow you to get better shots. You're gonna have more control over your end product by working with larger real estate and being able to just get the shot and get the framing that you want. One thing that I really found when I started using the bigger monitors is I really started to develop kind of my own style. And I would suggest to you that when you're out in the field, just move the camera around, try different angles, switch it up, see what's gonna work for you and work on your own style. So having the bigger monitor is gonna allow you to see the entire picture and ultimately is gonna get you better shots. All right, tip number 2 is don't be scared of log profiles. When I first got started in filmmaking, it took me a while before I started really taking advantage of the power of log. Hands down, you're gonna get better performance out of your camera, more dynamic range, and a just brighter, vivid, better looking image by using log profiles. So when I first got into things, I was really timid because I never felt like I could adjust my camera settings to get the right image. But using either Atom HDR or using a LUT on your monitor and reviewing your footage that way is gonna allow you to get log footage and be able to use that log footage and nail your exposure every time. So my suggestion is get out there, play with your camera, try it a couple of times. It's super easy to use. And I wish that when I started with log profiles, something like Atom HDR was out there and I started using them sooner, because the sooner you master it, the sooner you're superpowering your camera and your filmmaking abilities by taking advantage of what's already in the camera in hand. Okay, tip number 3 is more for on commercial sets. So for me, I like to bring the Sumo monitor, or on some of the bigger productions, I'll bring 2 Sumo monitors to set and use them to pull focus and also for a client monitor. What I like to do is either bring a 25-foot HDMI cord or a second wireless video transmitter, and I'll put my second Sumo monitor as far back as I possibly can. So what this is gonna do is it's gonna allow a place for the client and the agency to hang out and watch what you're doing, and it's gonna do a couple of things. One, it's gonna isolate your film crew from the client, so you have a little bit of breathing room so you guys can hang out and do your thing, kind of talk amongst yourselves, figure out what you're gonna do when the client's not sitting there looking at you like you don't know what the heck you're doing. Part of the creative process is talking with the crew members, kind of figuring out what you wanna do, improvising a little bit as you go. So it's great to kind of dial in your game plan without having the pressure of the client being right there. Secondly, you can record to the Sumo, which allows you a spot to review the footage with the client. This is gonna do a couple of things. You can put LUTs on the footage and show the client what it'll look like and after you get a little post on it, or maybe you have a LUT that you like that emulates the look that you want to go for, so you can let the client fall in love with that look on set and already sell them on your idea and your vision. So when you deliver the product, you guys are all on the same page for what the final imagery is going to look like. When it comes to playing back on the Sumo, this is gonna allow you a little bit of extra time with your camera package. If you record to the Sumo, you can be watching your files back on the Sumo and then not tying up the camera package if the AC is gonna go for a lens change, if you're gonna pull the camera out of the gimbal and go to sticks and slider. It's just gonna free up a little bit of time and not have to deal with sending the signal through the wireless receiver back to the monitor, which always ends up like being a bit of a cluster. So what I like to do is just record right to the Sumo, go for playback on there. It's gonna save you a little bit of time. And then over the course of all your shots throughout the day, it's a little more time here, a little more time there. And at the end of the day, you're gonna get about 15 extra minutes of filming just by not tying up the camera package by going for client playback. All right, tip number 4 is make your first AC drive you home. All right, well, not exactly, but hear me out on this. One thing that I like to do is after I pack up all my camera gear, I'll grab my monitor and a couple of spare batteries. And then while you're driving home, you can go through all of your clips, mark your favorites and mark your selects, and then get right into the editing bay as soon as you get home with all your favorite clips ready to go. This will save you a ton of time and just gives you that much extra time looking at your footage so you know what you have to work with in your edit, inside and out. The Atomos monitors have this built-in feature, and it's something that most people don't realize that they can take advantage of. All right, guys, thanks so much for checking out Atomos Academy. Hope you had a fun time, and we'll see you guys on the next one.